The great chamber fell silent as Delegate Zephyrus stepped forward. His tall, thin body shook as he moved toward the center of the massive hall. Around him, thousands of alien beings watched from their seats. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had scales that glowed in the dim light. A few looked almost like trees with eyes, but all of them stared at the ancient being who had called this emergency meeting. Zephyrus belonged to the Ethereal Collective, one of the oldest races in the galaxy. His people had lived for millions of years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched stars die and new ones be born. Nothing scared them anymore. Nothing except what he was about to discuss. "Fellow delegates," Zephyrus began, his voice carrying across the chamber without any technology to help it. "We face a threat unlike any we have known before." In the special section reserved for newcomers, Commander Jake Morrison shifted in his seat. The human officer wore his dress uniform, the blue fabric neat and clean. Next to him sat Dr. Lisa Park, a scientist who studied alien life. They had come here with hope in their hearts. Earth wanted to join the Galactic Federation. They thought it would be easy. "The species called humans," Zephyrus continued, "has submitted a request to join our federation. On the surface, they seem harmless. They are not the strongest beings we have met. They are not the smartest. They do not live the longest. Their technology is basic compared to ours." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many delegates wondered why Zephyrus seemed so worried about such a weak species. "But I tell you now," the ancient being said, his voice growing stronger, "these humans possess something far more dangerous than strength or intelligence. They have a condition that makes them the most terrifying force in the universe." "Jake." Morrison frowned. He leaned over to Dr. Park and whispered, "What is he talking about?" Dr. Park shook her head. She had studied many alien cultures, but she had never heard anything like this before. Zephyrus raised one long arm, and images appeared in the air above the chamber. The first showed a small human ship surrounded by much larger alien vessels. The second showed a human colony world. The third showed what looked like a battle in space. "These are records from our archives," Zephyrus explained. "Each tells the story of what happens when other species encounter humans and push them too far." He pointed to the first image. The Draconian Empire found a lone human exploration ship in their territory. The ship had only 50 crew members. The Draconians sent 200 warships to capture it. They demanded surrender. The image changed to show the human ship moving toward the Draconian fleet. The humans refused. When the Draconians killed 25 of the crew as a warning, we expected the humans to give up. Instead, they did something that still gives me nightmares. Zephyrus paused, letting his words sink in. They turned their ship into a weapon. They flew directly into the Draconian flagship and triggered their reactor to explode. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The image showed the explosion spreading from ship to ship, destroying the entire fleet. One small ship destroyed 200 Draconian warships. But that is not the worst part. The worst part is that the humans calculated this outcome from the beginning. They knew they would die. They chose death over surrender. A delegate from the Crystalline Confederacy stood up. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. Surely this was just one case of madness. All species have individuals who make poor choices. Zephyrus looked at her with eyes that had seen the birth of galaxies. That is what we thought too, until it happened again. And again, and again, he pointed to the second image. The siege of New Terra. An advanced species called the Purifiers blockaded a human colony world. They had superior ships and weapons. They offered the humans a simple choice: surrender and live as slaves or die. The image showed the human colony from space. It looked peaceful, with cities and farms spread across green continents. The humans chose a third option. They detonated their own planet. Shocked silence filled the chamber. Even species that had no emotions felt something like fear creep into their minds. They destroyed their own world rather than submit, Zephyrus continued. Millions of humans died. But they took the Purifier fleet with them. The explosion created a nebula that prevented anyone from using that star system for 300 years. Dr. Park grabbed Jake Morrison's arm. Is he telling the truth? She whispered. Jake looked at the images floating above them. Something deep in his memory stirred. Stories his grandfather had told him about Earth's history. Wars where humans had chosen death before defeat. He nodded slowly. The third case, Zephyrus said, pointing to the final image, involved human traders. A pirate confederation attacked one of their cargo ships. The pirates killed the crew and took the goods. A normal species would file a complaint with local authorities or hire security for future trips. The image showed dozens of small human ships moving through an asteroid field. The humans did neither. They formed hunting parties. With nothing but mining equipment and cargo vessels, they tracked down every pirate base in that sector. They did not stop until the entire Confederation was dead, all of them. Even the pirates' families, even their pets. The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Delegates turned to each other, discussing what they had heard. Some demanded more proof. Others wanted to know if such stories could be true. Zephyrus waited for quiet. When it came, he spoke again, and his words would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. Other species fight until victory becomes impossible. Humans fight until victory becomes inevitable. They have words for this condition. They call it going nuclear. They call it scorched earth. When humans enter this state, they will burn down the universe itself to achieve their goals. He turned to look directly at Jake Morrison and Dr. Park. The human officers stared back, beginning to understand why their simple request to join the Federation had caused such fear. I have lived for 2 million years, Zephyrus said, his voice barely above a whisper but somehow heard by every being in the chamber. I have seen species that could move stars. I have watched gods walk among mortals. I have witnessed the birth and death of entire dimensions. He paused, letting the weight of his age and experience settle over the assembly. But never in all my existence have I encountered a species so terrifying as humans. Because when they go berserk, when they enter that state of absolute determination, even gods cannot save you. Zephyrus moved his hand, and the floating images above the chamber changed. Now they showed old records, data files recovered from long-dead ships, and testimonies from survivors who had witnessed human fury firsthand. You want proof, the Ancient Delegate said. Let me show you the files we have gathered over the centuries. Let me show you what happens when humans are pushed beyond their breaking point. The first image showed a star map with a small blue dot moving toward a cluster of red ones. The date stamp read 300 years ago. The first record comes from the Draconian Empire. Admiral Vexlon commanded their 7th Fleet. His species ruled over 40 star systems. They were warriors who had never lost a battle. They considered themselves the finest military force in the galaxy. The image shifted to show the inside of a Draconian command ship. The aliens looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. Their scales were dark green and their eyes glowed yellow. Admiral Vexlon stood in the center, his massive form towering over his officers. The humans had sent a ship called the Frontier, explorer into Draconian space. It was a science vessel, not a warship. 50 crew members aboard, including their captain, Ryan Torres. The ship was collecting data about nearby stars when Vexlon's fleet found them. Zephyrus waved his hand again. Now the chamber could see the human ship. It was small and white, with large windows for observation. It looked peaceful, like it could not hurt anything. Admiral Vexlon sent a message to Captain Torres. He demanded immediate surrender. The humans were trespassing in Draconian territory. They would be taken prisoner and their ship would be destroyed. A new image appeared. It showed Captain Torres on his ship's bridge. He was a middle-aged man with short, brown hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple uniform with no weapons visible. Captain Torres sent back a one-word reply, Zephyrus said. No, murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. Many species had rules about surrender. When faced with impossible odds, the smart choice was always to give up and hope for mercy. Admiral Vexlon could not believe it. One small ship against 200 draconian warships? He decided to show the humans their mistake. He ordered his fleet to fire warning shots around the human vessel. The images showed bright energy beams missing the Frontier Explorer by mere meters. The human ship did not move. It did not run. It simply floated in space, waiting. Still, Captain Torres refused to surrender, so Admiral Vexlon took more direct action. He captured 25 human crew members using teleporter technology. Then he executed them one by one while forcing Captain Torres to watch. The chamber fell silent. Even among warrior species, killing prisoners was considered dishonorable. We expected the humans to break then, Zephyrus continued. Any rational being would have surrendered to save the remaining crew. But Captain Torres did something that still confuses our greatest minds. He smiled. The image showed Torres on his bridge, and indeed there was a small smile on his face. But his eyes looked cold, like winter ice. The human captain sent one final message to Admiral Vexlon. He said, "Thank you for making this decision easy." Then he turned to his remaining crew and gave an order that no draconian survivor could ever forget. He said, "Set course for the flagship. Full speed. Prepare to overload the reactor." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even species with no emotions felt something like shock. The Frontier Explorer turned and flew directly toward Vexlon's command ship. The Draconians fired everything they had, but the human vessel kept coming. At the last moment, Captain Torres sent one more message across all channels. He said, "This is what happens when you murder our people." Remember this, the final image showed a massive explosion. The human ship's reactor overloaded just as it hit the Draconian flagship. The blast was so powerful it created a chain reaction, destroying ship after ship until the entire fleet was gone. 200 Draconian warships, 50,000 elite soldiers, all destroyed by one small science vessel with 50 humans aboard. Zephyrus paused, letting the numbers sink in. And the worst part? We found Captain Torres's personal logs afterward. He had planned this response from the moment Vexlon threatened his crew. The images changed again, showing a different scene. This time it was a beautiful planet with blue oceans and green continents. Cities could be seen from space, connected by roads and covered with lights. The second record comes from the Purifier Collective. They believed all species should follow their idea of perfection. Any world that did not meet their standards was cleansed. They had destroyed over 1,000 planets. A new image showed the Purifier ships. They were long and silver, looking like giant needles in space. Their weapons could crack planets in half. New Terra was a human colony world. 5 million humans lived there. They had built farms and cities, schools and hospitals. It was a peaceful place where children played and families lived happy lives. The image showed human families walking through parks, children laughing as they ran through playgrounds, farmers working in fields under an alien sun. The Purifiers arrived without warning. Their leader, High Cleanser Valdris, sent a message to the colony's governor, Amy Rodriguez. The choice was simple: submit to Purifier rule and live as slaves, or resist and be destroyed. Governor Rodriguez appeared in the image. She was a woman in her 40s with gray hair and determined eyes. She wore simple civilian clothes, not military uniform. Governor Rodriguez called a meeting of all the colony leaders. They discussed their options for 6 hours. The Purifiers waited, confident that fear would make the humans see reason. Zephyrus's voice grew quiet, forcing the chamber to strain to hear him. When the 6 hours ended, Governor Rodriguez sent her reply. She said, "We choose option 3. What was option 3? Called out a delegate from the Crystal Confederacy. There was no option 3, Zephyrus replied. The humans made one. The image showed Governor Rodriguez speaking to her people. Every human face looked calm but determined. She told her colonists the truth. They could not fight the Purifier fleet. They did not have weapons strong enough or ships fast enough. but they could make sure the purifiers gained nothing from their victory. The chamber watched as human engineers worked frantically in underground facilities. They were connecting explosive charges to the planet's core. In 12 hours, the humans of New Terra turned their own world into a weapon. They rigged the planet's molten core to explode. When High Cleanser Valdris demanded a final answer, Governor Rodriguez gave it. The image showed her standing in a command center, her hand on a red button. She said, "You wanted to cleanse this world? Consider it cleansed." Then she pushed the button. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The entire planet cracked apart like an egg, taking the purifier fleet with it. The blast created a nebula of radioactive gas that still glows today. 5 million humans chose death over slavery, Zephyrus said. They took 20,000 purifiers with them, and they made sure no one else could ever claim their world. The images changed one final time, showing cargo ships and mining vessels floating in an asteroid field. The third record involves human merchants. A pirate confederation called the Bloodstar Alliance attacked the trading ship Lucky Strike. They killed all 15 crew members and stole the cargo. To most species, this would be the end of the story. Pirates attack, people die, life goes on. The image showed the wreckage of the Lucky Strike drifting in space, its hull torn open by weapons fire. But the humans who owned the Lucky Strike did not accept this. They formed what they called a hunting party, 67 merchant vessels, armed with nothing but mining lasers and cargo equipment. Now the images showed human ships spreading out across space, moving with deadly purpose. For 2 years, these merchants hunted the Bloodstar Alliance. They tracked down every pirate base, every hidden station, every safe harbor. They did not stop when the pirates offered to pay damages. They did not stop when the pirates begged for mercy. The final image showed empty space where pirate bases used to be. When it was over, the Bloodstar Alliance no longer existed. Every pirate was dead. Every base was destroyed. Even the pirates' families and pets were gone. The humans had eliminated them completely. Zephyrus looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from 100 different worlds. This is what humans call justice. This is what they do. When you hurt their people, they do not seek victory. They seek extinction of their enemies. The council chamber buzzed with heated discussion for 3 hours after Zephyrus finished his presentation. Delegates argued in dozens of languages while Jake Morrison and Dr. Lisa Park sat in their section, watching the chaos unfold around them. Finally, a massive creature that looked like a walking mountain stood up. This was Overlord Granite of the Stone Collective, one of the most respected military leaders in the galaxy. His voice rumbled like an earthquake. "These stories are interesting, Delegate Zephyrus, but they are old. Perhaps humans have changed. Perhaps they have learned to be more civilized. We need current proof of their nature." Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Many delegates nodded their various heads, tentacles, and other body parts. Zephyrus looked tired. His ancient eyes held the weight of millions of years. "You want to test them? You want to see what happens when humans face a real threat?" "Exactly," Overlord Granite replied. "We will create a controlled situation. Pirates will attack their ship. We will observe how they respond. If they negotiate or retreat like civilized beings, perhaps they can join our federation." Jake Morrison leaned over to Dr. Park. "Did you hear that? They want to test us with a fake pirate attack." Dr. Park frowned. "Should we tell them we can hear everything they're saying? Their translation devices work both ways." "Let's see what happens," Jake said quietly. "Maybe it's time they learned something about human nature." The council voted quickly. Only Zephyrus and a few other ancient delegates opposed the test. Within an hour, the plan was set. The humans would return to their ship and head toward neutral space. Pirates would attack them there. Hidden cameras would record everything for the council to study. Jake Morrison and Dr. Park returned to their ship, the Earth vessel Friendship. It was a diplomatic ship designed for peace talks and cultural exchange. The crew of 30 included scientists, diplomats, and engineers. Most had never seen combat. As they prepared to leave the station, Jake called his senior staff to the bridge. Dr. Park was there, along with engineer Tony Walsh and medical officer Dr. Karen Lee. Tony was a big man with thick arms from years of working with ship engines. Dr. Lee was small and quiet, but her eyes showed the sharp intelligence of someone who had studied medicine for 20 years. Listen carefully, Jake told them. The council is going to test us. They're sending fake pirates to attack our ship. They want to see if we'll negotiate or run away. Tony scratched his beard. Fake pirates? That's their plan? They think we'll act like other species, Dr. Park explained. They expect us to follow their rules of civilized warfare. Dr. Lee looked worried. What are we going to do? This is a diplomatic mission. We're not soldiers. Jake Morrison smiled, and something in that smile would have terrified Zephyrus if he had seen it. We're going to show them what humans do when someone threatens our ship. 3 hours later, the Friendship drifted through an asteroid field in neutral space. The crew went about their normal duties, but Jake had quietly given certain orders. Tony Walsh worked in the engine room with a team of engineers. Dr. Lee prepared her medical bay for casualties. Dr. Park studied star charts and noted the locations of nearby asteroids. The attack came without warning. 6 ships dropped out of hyperspace and surrounded the Friendship. They were painted black with red markings, designed to look like typical pirate vessels. The lead ship was crewed by Vorthan warriors, some of the fiercest fighters in the galaxy. The council had chosen them because they could pretend to be pirates while making sure no real harm came to the humans. Captain Thulrock of the lead ship opened communications. His species looked like bears with too many teeth. Human vessel, you are now prisoners of the Crimson Fang pirates. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Jake Morrison appeared on the view screen. He looked calm and professional. This is Commander Morrison of the Earthship Friendship. We are on a diplomatic mission. We demand safe passage under galactic law, Thulrock grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. There is no law here, human. Surrender or be destroyed. In the council chambers, delegates watched the scene unfold on their screens. Many nodded approvingly. The humans were following proper diplomatic protocol. They were trying to negotiate. You have 10 minutes to decide, Thulrock continued. After that, we start shooting. Jake Morrison's image disappeared from the screen. The pirate captain expected to see panic on the human ship. Instead, he saw something that confused him. The humans were moving with purpose, but they were not preparing to surrender. They were working. In the engine room, Tony Walsh connected power cables to the ship's mining laser. How much power can this thing take before it overloads? He asked. His team, about 3 times normal output, replied engineer Betty Clark. But it'll burn out after 1 shot. 1 shot is all we need, Tony said. He began rewiring the laser system to draw power directly from the ship's reactor. Meanwhile, Dr. Lee worked in her medical bay, but she was not preparing to treat wounded crew members. She was building something else entirely. Her medical knowledge included a deep understanding of chemistry. She knew which medical supplies, when mixed together, would create powerful explosives. Dr. Park used the ship's sensors to map the asteroid field around them. She marked the largest asteroids and calculated their mass and trajectory. Then she sent her data to the bridge. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair, looking relaxed. But his hands moved quickly over his control panel, activating systems that were not supposed to exist on a diplomatic ship. The Friendship might be designed for peace, but its crew had made some modifications during the journey. Time's up, humans, Thulrock announced. Surrender now or face the consequences. Jake opened communications again. I have a counteroffer for you. Thulrock leaned forward, curious. Oh? And what might that be? You have 30 seconds to leave this area before we destroy you. The pirate captain laughed. You? Destroy us? This is a diplomatic ship with no weapons. 25 seconds, Jake said calmly. On the council viewing screens, delegates watched in confusion. Was the human bluffing? How could a peaceful ship threaten 6 pirate vessels? 15 seconds, Jake continued. Thulrock stopped laughing. Something in the human's voice made him nervous. You're insane. We have 6 ships with full weapons. 10 seconds. Dr. Park looked up from her sensor station. All asteroids are marked and targeted, Commander. Tony Walsh's voice came from the engine room. Mining laser is ready. Power at 300%. Dr. Lee reported from her medical. Explosive charges are prepared and loaded into the cargo launchers. 5 seconds, Jake said. Thulrock suddenly realized that the human was not bluffing, but he was playing a role for the Council. He could not retreat without ruining the test. Fire! He ordered his ships. Jake Morrison pushed a button on his chair. Engage. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries. The Friendship moved like a ship possessed. Tony's modified mining laser fired. With the power of a battleship cannon, cutting through the lead pirate vessel's shields like paper, Dr. Lee's explosive charges shot out from cargo launchers, striking 2 more ships and disabling their engines, but the most impressive part was how Dr. Park used the asteroids. The Friendship's tractor beam grabbed a massive rock and hurled it at the 4th pirate ship. The impact sent the vessel spinning into another asteroid, crushing its hull. In less than 2 minutes, 4 of the 6 pirate ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 2 tried to flee, but Jake Morrison was not finished. Tony, can we catch them? He asked. Already on it, Commander, came the reply. The Friendship's engines roared to life, pushing the ship faster than its design specifications should have allowed. In the council chambers, Overlord Granite watched in stunned silence. They're chasing them. Why are they chasing them? Zephyrus answered quietly. Because that's what humans do. They don't just defend themselves. They eliminate threats completely. The chase lasted another hour. The Friendship hunted the remaining pirate ships through the asteroid field like a predator stalking prey. When it was over, all 6 vessels were either destroyed or captured. Jake Morrison opened communications to the Council. His face appeared on screens across the chamber, and his smile was cold as winter. Mission accomplished, he reported. We've eliminated the pirate threat in this sector. We also found their base of operations and gathered intelligence about their supply network. Would you like us to track down and destroy their support structure as well? The chamber fell silent. Every delegate stared at the human commander who had just turned a diplomatic vessel into a weapon of war. That won't be necessary, Overlord Granite finally managed to say. Jake nodded. Understood. But if you need any other tests, just let us know. We're always happy to solve problems. As the Friendship headed back to the station, Zephyrus stood alone in the empty chamber. He had tried to warn them. He had shown them the records. But some lessons could only be learned through experience. Now the Council knew the truth about humans. When threatened, they did not negotiate. They did not retreat. They turned everything around them into a weapon and fought until nothing remained. Of their enemies, the test was over. The humans had passed. But Zephyrus wondered if the galaxy would survive the consequences. 3 days after the pirate incident, Dr. Alex Chun received an urgent message while working at an archaeological site on the edge of known space. The human scientist had spent 5 years studying the ruins of an ancient civilization that predated most galactic history. The structures were massive and made from materials that seemed to bend light around them. Alex was a thin man with careful hands and sharp eyes behind thick glasses. He had dedicated his life to understanding the past, believing that old secrets could help build a better future. Today, he was about to discover just how dangerous those secrets could be. The message came from the Galactic Council itself. They wanted him to search the ruins for any connection to humanity's origins. After watching the Friendship turn 6 warships into scrap metal, the Council was desperate to understand what made humans so different from other species. Alex read the message twice, then called his team together. There were 12 researchers with him, including Dr. Maria Santos, a linguist who specialized in dead languages, and Professor Paul Green, an expert in ancient technology. They had been working on this site longer than any other team, but they had never looked for connections to Earth. The Council thinks these ruins might be connected to humanity somehow. Alex explained to his team. I know it sounds crazy. These structures are millions of years old. Humans have only been traveling in space for a few hundred years. Dr. Santos looked up from the stone tablet she was studying. Actually, that might not be so crazy. I've been working on these symbols for 3 years. Some of them look familiar, but I couldn't figure out why. Now I think I know. She showed them a series of carved symbols on the ancient stone. Look at this pattern here. It's similar to mathematical concepts that humans use naturally. Other species do math differently, but this matches human thinking exactly. Professor Green had been examining a strange device they found buried beneath the main temple. It was made of the same light-bending material as the building, shaped like a crystal but with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. I've never seen technology like this, he said. It doesn't use any energy source I can identify, but my instruments say it's still active after millions of years. Whatever built this was far beyond anything we understand today. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He activated his communication device and sent a message to the council. We need to speak with the oldest beings in the galaxy. Someone who might remember when these ruins were new. The answer came back within an hour. Elder Vorith of the Eternal Watchers was willing to speak with them. The Eternal Watchers were so old that most species considered them myths. They had existed since the early days of the universe, watching galaxies form and civilizations rise and fall. The meeting took place in deep space, aboard Elder Vorith's ship. The vessel was impossibly large, made from crystallized starlight and powered by forces that science could not explain. Alex and his team felt very small as they walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Elder Vorith waited for them in a chamber that looked like the inside of a star. The being itself was hard to describe. It seemed to be made of light and shadow at the same time, constantly shifting between different forms. When it spoke, its voice sounded like distant thunder. You wish to know about the predecessors, Voroth said without any introduction. I wondered when someone would ask about them again. Alex stepped forward, trying not to be intimidated by the ancient entity. Predecessors? Is that what they were called? It is what we called them, Vorith replied. Their true name cannot be spoken by younger species. They ruled the galaxy long before your kind was born, long before most life existed at all. Dr. Santos held up her tablet showing the carved symbols. These ruins were stunning. Were they built by the predecessors? Vorith's form shifted, and something like sadness passed across its features. Those are predecessor symbols, yes. But calling them ruins is wrong. Those structures are not abandoned, they are sleeping. Professor Green looked at the ancient device in his hands. This technology, it's still active. What does it do? That depends on who activates it, Vorith answered. Predecessor technology responds to genetic patterns. It recognizes the blood of its makers. Alex felt his heart begin to race. What exactly were the predecessors like? Vorith was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried the weight of cosmic horror. They were the most terrible force the universe has ever known. Not because they were evil, but because they never stopped. When the predecessors decided something needed to be done, nothing could change their minds. Not reason, not mercy, not even the gods themselves. The ancient being moved closer, and Alex could feel power radiating from it like heat from a star. Other species would fight until victory became impossible. The predecessors fought until victory became inevitable. They pursued their enemies across dimensions, through time itself. They did not seek to defeat their foes. They sought to erase them from existence completely. Dr. Santos asked the question they were all thinking. What happened to them? No one knows, Vorith admitted. One day they were the masters of reality itself. The next day they were gone. Some believe they transcended to a higher plane of existence. Others think they destroyed themselves in some final war. But their technology remains, waiting for the right genetic signature to wake it up. Professor Green looked down at the device in his hands. It had begun to glow softly. Right genetic signature? Vorth's attention focused on the professor, and the ancient being's voice became urgent. Where did you get that? From the ruins we're studying, Alex replied. Why? What's wrong? It's responding to human genetic markers, Vorth said, its form beginning to pulse with alarm. That should be impossible unless... The device in Professor Green's hands suddenly blazed with light. Energy coursed through it, and the professor dropped it in surprise, but the activation had already begun. The device projected a beam of pure information toward the communication array on Elder Vorth's ship. Stop it, Vorth commanded. If that signal reaches the predecessor network, it will wake systems across the galaxy. But it was too late. The signal transmitted at faster than light speed, carrying a simple message to every predecessor installation in known space. The heirs have returned. Alex watched in horror as lights began appearing on the star maps around them. Dozens of systems that had been dark for millions of years suddenly came alive. Ancient weapons platforms that had been floating silent in deep space began powering up. Massive structures hidden in asteroid fields started moving toward inhabited worlds. What have we done? Dr. Santis whispered. Vorth's form was now pulsing rapidly with what could only be fear. You have awakened the legacy of the most dangerous species that ever lived. And if humans truly carry predecessor genes, then the galaxy faces a choice it hoped never to make again. Back on his archaeological site, Alex's communication device buzzed with emergency messages. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Ancient technology was activating everywhere. Weapons that could crack planets were charging up. Defensive systems that could stop entire fleets were coming online. And all of it was recognizing human genetic patterns as command. Authority. Jake Mortson's voice came through on an emergency channel. Dr. Chun, we need you back at the council. Station immediately. Something is happening to alien technology across the galaxy. Ships are shutting down, weapons are refusing to fire on human vessels, and defensive grids are treating us like we own them. Alex looked at Elder Vorath, whose ancient form seemed smaller now, diminished by fear. You said the predecessors were gone. But they're not, are they? They're us? Humans are what the predecessors became, or what they left behind to carry on their work, Vorath replied quietly. Either way, the galaxy must now face the same choice our ancestors did millions of years ago. Submit to human authority, or face the full awakening of predecessor technology. As Alex and his team prepared to leave, the ancient being offered one final warning. The predecessors were not evil, but they were absolute. If humans inherit their full legacy, there will be no negotiation, no compromise, no mercy for those who stand against them. The galaxy will kneel, or it will burn. The archaeological site around them had begun to change. Lights were appearing in the ruins, ancient symbols glowing with power that had slept for eons. The very air hummed with energy as systems older. The most stars came back to life. Daleks realized that his peaceful dig had just become ground zero for the most important moment in galactic history. The predecessors had returned, wearing human faces and carrying human hearts. The question now was whether the galaxy would survive what came next. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within 6 hours of the predecessor awakening. Delegates who had been traveling for days arrived to find their home systems under the protection of ancient weapons they could not understand or control. The massive chamber buzzed with panic and fear. President Frank Mitchell of Earth sat in the human delegation area, looking calm despite the chaos around him. He was a man in his 60s with gray hair and steady hands. He had led Earth through wars and disasters, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Next to him, Commander Jake Morrison provided military updates from across the galaxy. Sir, Jake said quietly, predecessor installations have activated in over 3,000 systems. Every alien military base that tried to target human ships has been disabled. Their weapons simply won't fire on us anymore. Dr. Lisa Park leaned over from her seat. It's not just weapons. The technology is treating us like we own it. Space stations are opening their docks for human ships without permission. Planetary defense grids are standing down when we approach. Across the chamber, Delegate Zephyrus stood at the center podium. The ancient being looked older than ever, burdened by knowledge that he had tried to share but no one had believed. His voice carried across the silent chamber. Fellow delegates, we face the situation I warned you about. The humans are not just another species seeking membership. They are the inheritors of the predecessor legacy. Every piece of ancient technology in the galaxy now recognizes their authority. Overlord Granite of the Stone Collective rose from his seat. His massive rock-like form trembled with barely controlled fear. This cannot be true. The predecessors vanished millions of years ago. Humans have only existed in space for centuries. Elder Vorath materialized in the chamber, his form of light and shadow causing many delegates to gasp in surprise. The ancient being had never before appeared at a council meeting. The predecessors did not vanish, Vorath said, his voice like distant thunder. They evolved. They transcended their physical forms and became something new. Humanity carries their genetic legacy and their psychological patterns. The technology recognizes this and responds accordingly. A delegate from the Crystal Confederacy stood up, her voice ringing like bells. What does this mean for the rest of us? Are we to become slaves to human masters? President Mitchell rose slowly from his seat. All conversation stopped as the chamber turned to look at him. He walked calmly to the speaker's platform, his footsteps echoing in the silence. If I may address the council, he said, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. I think there's been a misunderstanding about what humanity wants. Zephyrus gestured for him to continue. Please, President Mitchell, tell us what Earth desires. Frank Mitchell looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings from hundreds of worlds. We came here asking to join your federation as equals. That request hasn't changed. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be part of it. Overlord Granite's voice rumbled with disbelief. But you could command us now. The ancient technology obeys you? You could force us to submit? President Mitchell smiled, and something in that expression reminded every delegate of the stories they had heard about human nature. You're right, we could force you. But that's not how we prefer to do things. A new voice cut through the chamber. High Chancellor Nexus of the Hegemony World stood up, his insectoid form clicking with agitation. We have prepared an alternative proposal. Humanity will be granted protected status within the Federation. You will have representation, but limited voting rights. Your expansion will be monitored and controlled. In exchange, you will not activate any more predecessor technology. The chamber fell silent. Every delegate waited for the human response. This was the moment that would determine the future of galactic civilization. President Mitchell's smile never wavered, but his eyes grew cold. Let me make sure I understand your offer. You want us to accept second-class citizenship in exchange for not using technology that already recognizes us as its rightful owners? The alternative, High Chancellor Nexus said, is that we unite every species in the galaxy against you. Even predecessor technology cannot stand against the combined might of 10,000 worlds. Jake Morrison leaned forward in his seat, whispering urgently to President Mitchell. Sir, our sensors are picking up fleet movements across the galaxy. They're forming a coalition to attack Earth. President Mitchell nodded calmly. Thank you, Commander. He turned back to address the Council. High Chancellor Nexus, I appreciate your honesty, but I think you misunderstand something fundamental about human nature. He walked to the center of the chamber, his voice growing stronger with each word. You seem to think this is a negotiation. You believe you can threaten us into accepting less than we deserve. But let me explain something about how humans think. The chamber was so quiet that the hum of life support systems seemed loud. When someone offers us an ultimatum, we don't see a choice between two options. We see a problem that needs to be solved permanently. President Mitchell's voice remained calm and reasonable, which somehow made his words more terrifying. When you threaten our homeworld, you don't inspire fear. You inspire the kind of response that your ancestors learned to avoid. Suddenly, alerts began sounding throughout the chamber. Delegate communication devices activated as emergency reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Elder Vorith's form pulsed with alarm. The predecessor network is fully active now. Weapon platforms are emerging from deep space. Ancient guardians are moving toward inhabited systems. Dr. Alex Chen's voice came through the chamber's communication system from his archaeological site. President Mitchell, the ruins here are transforming. The technology isn't just activating, it's building new systems. I'm seeing construction on a scale that could reshape entire star systems. High Chancellor Nexus's insectoid voice rose to a panicked screech. Stop this! Recall the technology. We withdraw our ultimatum. President Mitchell looked at him with the patience of a teacher explaining a simple concept to a slow student. Chancellor, you seem to think we're controlling this technology. We're not. It's responding to perceived threats against humanity according to its original programming. Overlord Granite's massive form was now visibly shaking. What are you saying? I'm saying that when you threatened to unite 10,000 worlds against us, the predecessor network interpreted that as a declaration of war against its maker's inheritors. President Mitchell's smile was gone now, replaced by an expression of terrible calm. The technology is now preparing to defend humanity with the same thoroughness that the predecessors once used. Reports continued flooding in. Entire fleets were being disabled by weapons that appeared from nowhere. Planetary defense systems were shutting down across the galaxy. Ancient installations were manufacturing new technology at impossible speeds. Zephyrus stepped forward, his ancient voice heavy with despair. How do we stop this? How do we make the technology stand down? President Mitchell turned to face the entire council. The same way our ancestors would have stopped it. You accept us as equals, with full membership and voting rights in the Federation. The technology will recognize this as a peaceful resolution and return to dormant status. And if we refuse? Asked a delegate from the far side of the chamber. Jake Morrison stood up to answer. Then the predecessor network will continue its defensive protocols until all perceived threats to humanity are eliminated. Based on the historical records, that usually means complete extinction of hostile forces. The vote was called immediately. No delegate wanted to discover what complete extinction looked like when applied by technology that could manipulate matter at the atomic level. The motion passed unanimously. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Federation with all rights and privileges thereof. The moment the vote was recorded, predecessor installations across the galaxy powered down and returned to their silent watch. President Mitchell thanked the council graciously and shook hands with delegates, who tried not to show their fear. As he prepared to leave, Zephyrus approached him privately. You planned this, the ancient delegate said. You knew what would happen when your archaeologist activated that device. President Mitchell looked at the being who had tried to warn the galaxy about humanity. Delegate Zephyrus, humans have been studying those ruins for 5 years. Did you really think we hadn't figured out what they were? As the human delegation departed, delegates throughout the chamber began to understand a new reality. They were not members of a federation that had graciously accepted humanity. They were members of a federation that existed because humanity allowed it to continue. In the depths of space, ancient weapons waited patiently for the next time someone might threaten their maker's children. The galaxy was at peace, but it was a peace built on the understanding that some sleeping giants should never be awakened.